Hi, everybody. It's Kathy Boyle, president of Chapin Hill Advisors. So my firm is a planning firm, and we work with all different types of people. I'm a planaholic. I love helping people figure out how they're going to get to their goal. So one of the things we offer is divorce planning. And we find that people make mistakes a lot of times on not only choosing the attorney, sometimes they choose the attorney first instead of the process. So today we're going to talk about choosing the process, when mediation works, when it doesn't work, and how you know up front. So we're going to interview Gabrielle Hartley with her own law firm. She's also counsel to a firm in the city. So she practices both in Massachusetts and New York City. So she can help a wide variety of people that we know and love. So Gabrielle, let's start first with your background. How did you get into divorce planning?
So I grew up with parents who divorced, and divorce is about the last thing that I thought that I was going to do. And I wound up getting a job for Judge Jeffrey Sunshine, who's actually the chief administrative judge for all of the matrimonial cases in the state of New York. And I found that I absolutely loved it. I resolved nearly 1,000 trial-ready cases when I was working for him. And ever since then, I have been litigating and mediating and doing collaborative divorce law. And the firm that I'm with in New York City is actually also a major firm in Westchester County.
Oh, terrific. Okay, so let's talk about the process. What is mediation versus collaboration versus litigation?
Okay, so mediation means that there is a neutral third party at the table who you and your spouse sit with, and you try to come to an agreement together without anyone by your side necessarily, unless you're doing attorney-assisted mediation, which I'll talk about at the end if time allows. But mediation is really good for a couple where there's complete balance of power within the relationship. There's open disclosure. There is no concern or fear of secreting, meaning that there's not one party who has a lot more control, power, influence, knowledge around money, around the children, around all of the things that are really important when you're going through the divorce. A mediator may be very neutral. When you do a mediation training, they really sort of try to explain to you never to voice your opinion, not to educate on the law. When I am mediating in New York and Massachusetts, I often will ask the clients when I'm meeting if they want me to tell them what the range of outcomes may be, just so that they have some sense of what they're talking about. But to be honest, I don't think it is ever a good idea to mediate without first knowing what your rights are. Because how can you give something up until you know what you are giving away? So mediation is wonderful for the right people. Mediation is something that you can jump into at any time along the process. It's not for everybody. Some people do better with collaborative law. I believe there's a very, very robust collaborative practice in Westchester and in Connecticut as well, which is where you literally are contracting away your rights to go to court, which might sound like, well, why would I do that? I want to be able to go to court if things don't work out. But in the collaborative practice, each party has a lawyer who you all four sign a collaborative agreement. In that agreement, you're saying we are a team, we trust each other. Obviously, if everything were perfect, you'd be staying married, but you trust each other enough that it's safe to just come to the table and then to loop in a certified financial, a CDFA, for certified financial divorce analyst planner. You'd get in maybe a divorce coach, somebody else. So you have all these allied professionals working together. It sounds like, oh my gosh, why would I want all these people? But the truth is, rather than going through the whole litigation process, when you have people who are skilled, who understand what they do and who do it well, you can really spend a lot less money over the course of time, even though upfront you might be dumping down a lot of cash. The third approach to divorce is the traditional litigation approach. So litigation is really, unfortunately, for me, it's the least preferable. However, it is the most necessary if there is an imbalance of power that cannot otherwise be rectified. When you go to court, you have a judge, which everybody is familiar with, who's going to hear both sides of the evidence and then decide, how things should be split. And there's timetables, and you you can't prove everything. The judge is not a magician, right? The judge I used to work for used to say, you don't want this stranger in black robes deciding your life, which is true. Like, if the good thing about mediation and collaborative is you're making your own decision. But in cases where you have someone who refuses to come to the table or offers things that are just completely inappropriate, like you have so much money and they're counting everything as theirs, or, they refuse to let you see the kids, or whatever the case may be. So litigation can be very powerful if you need it. So as much as I talk a lot about the positive divorce approach and the better apart method, and I'm personally very supportive of divorcing well for your personal legacy, you're not going to divorce well if you have a bad outcome. And if you are married to somebody who is lying and secreting and not understanding that everything is not theirs, then you may need litigation. And it doesn't mean that you can't be positive, and it doesn't mean that your whole life is over. In fact, your life may just be starting. Oftentimes people go to court, and once they go to court, the other side backs down and things have a tendency to resolve. Okay, I'm sorry.
So I've seen some horror stories. I mean, somebody just asked me as a favor to try to find someone to be able to go to court in Brooklyn to the higher court, because the referee had decided that this gal should get 1 year of alimony. She has full custody of the kids, $2,500 a month, which is nothing. Her husband has a cash business and probably worth $5 or $6 million, spent a fortune on the forensic, which was he paid for it for some reason, and she doesn't have access. So this poor woman is completely broke, without resources. So you just feel horrible when women get into these situations, and he's politically connected. So unfortunately, we see some really bad outcomes. Men, in my opinion, are very attached to their money, and they plan things in advance. And I've seen cases where women get to the table, they ask for the divorce, and when they get their financials, his were prepared 6 months ago. So I do think that sometimes women are a little bit naive about the whole idea of going to mediation, thinking that they're going to have a friendly, amicable settlement, or, perhaps the in and out of, he left me for another woman, maybe I can get him back. So I think a little bit of ambivalence sometimes enters into it. So let's talk about finding the right mediator. Let's assume that you think you can go through mediation. How do you go about finding a mediator, and what's the difference between a mediator who's not an attorney and someone like yourself who's also admitted to the bar?
So if you go to a mediator who is not an attorney, be very careful that they know all of the issues that will come up in your divorce. If you go to a mediator who's not an attorney, it may be a vehicle you might think, oh, it's going to be nicer, or you're going to save money because you'll do things with co-pays or whatever. But the fact of the matter is there is so much nuance that you just may not know, even if they take a course in divorces. Like, only a divorce lawyer truly understands what clear and unequivocal language means in an agreement, for instance, or truly understands what you're giving up, or truly knows the questions to ask. Like, I mediate with people actually all over the entire world, primarily in the United States, and I always have my clients first speak to counsel so they know what they're giving up, but I know what questions to have them ask. And if you go to a social worker or a therapist, they may not know. I think a therapist could be wonderful for parent coordination, to check in over time. I mean, there's a lot of times you may want a therapist or social worker involved, but typically not to serve as your mediator, in my opinion. How to find somebody? You want somebody whose agreements stick. Not just, oh, I liked him, I liked her, they were a nice guy, they were a nice gal. I can't tell you how many agreements I saw across my desk when I clerked for the judge, or even now come into my office for modification, when people say, the parties believe they can have an open and reasonable visitation plan, until they don't, until the new wife comes in, until the new husband comes in. So you have to be very careful, ask a lot of questions, trust your gut, and don't be too impatient. Don't just jump with the first person if you don't know enough about them. If the person, see what they put out on social media, see what their messaging is, see how they appear, and ask around, because sometimes appearances are not actually accurate reflections of the person as well.
Got it. And then let's just cover one more area. You're also a divorce coach. And I think another mistake that women make is when they're going through this process, it's extremely emotional. The end of any marriage is extremely difficult to go through, even if you can't wait to get out. So I think one of the mistakes that women make is they think that the attorney is a friend. And I think that's also true in the divorce coaching process. So let's talk a little bit about how do you avoid that trap? How do you, limit your gossip and your crying and your, review of the situation personally with your girlfriends as opposed to your professional advisors?
Yeah, so it's a pretty complicated question, really. Like, some of it needs to be hashed out, but you have to be very careful not to use your lawyer as a therapist, especially, there are some lawyers who are very skilled at doing that piece of it, and that's okay. But some lawyers, like if you're in heavy duty litigation, right, your lawyer is a fighter. Your lawyer wants to get you the best, they want to win, and you might need that, and that's fine. But that's not the lawyer who's going to be saying to you, how do you want to look back on your life in 5 years? How do you want to feel about yourself? So you need to know who you're looking to as an advisor. It's not a one size fits all. I do a lot of collaborative work. My clients know that we're going to be doing a lot of processing. We just are. I'm not a therapist. They sign away like I'm not a licensed mental health professional, but I'm very, very, very focused on what is your and your family's narrative going to be in 5 years, in 10 years? And the narrative is not like, oh, I was so nice, I didn't go for anything. No. You want to be strong. You want to be vigilant. You want to get what you're due. But, if you're due $7 million and you get 6 and he doesn't hate your guts, that might be fine. That might be. And I if that's not resonating with you, I'm not your lawyer, but I know all the lawyers. I can connect you with a lot of lawyers. Do you know what I mean? So you have to know you have to know your gut. Now the gossip, that's a really big deal. Gossip can really, your negative feelings about your spouse, your soon to be ex-spouse, are likely to subside over time. But when you talk about it to others, it's going to inure to your detriment as well as to your children's detriment over the long haul. So pick 1 or 2 people that you can be open with, who you really trust, who are in your tightest, most inner circle. Now, in terms of work as a divorce coach, I do divorce strategy coaching, where people don't know what kind of divorce path to take. They don't know when to do what, and they call me at different points during the divorce process, and I help them I'm like a paid, really smart, really experienced friend, like you said, not to get, but in some cases, like I'll even go to the divorce meetings so that there's another ear, and I'm not emotionally involved. It's just as my job. Now, there are also divorce coaches. Be careful who you go to. They have varying degrees of training. A divorce lawyer who is also a divorce coach can be a really great option. I train a lot of divorce lawyers to do divorce coaching, and what's good about them is they understand the process from the legal perspective, and presumably they've done some training about the emotional, empathetic, how do we close this case? How do we move forward? What are the tools I can give my clients to move forward along the path?
Got it. All right, that's great information. We're delighted to have you. So why don't we tell everybody how we can find you?
GabrielleHartley.com. You can find me online, and on YouTube. I have divorce and more conversations also at Gabrielle Hartley.
Wonderful. We're delighted to have you in our Splitsville circle.
Thank you so much, Kathy. It was a pleasure.
Great. All right. I think that was good. You're a great interviewer. Easy. You're high energy.
Oh my God, I did a course yesterday. It was 5 of the quietest people. It was horrible. Oh. It was so boring because I was just talking, and I was like, so what does this mean to you? And they literally were all just sitting there. And of course they paid me. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just keep talking. And then they couldn't have liked it. Like, it was a freaking PowerPoint. If we don't talk, we don't get anything out of it. Anyway.
I know. Who was the audience?
So I do these quick, Better Apart Method training sessions, like 1 or 2. So they were divorce professionals. Yesterday I had 2 divorce coaches, a divorce lawyer, and a mediator.
Oh, okay.
And a friend with a CDFA,
right.
But sometimes it's CDFAs. It's just teaching them the basics of the model. So my book is really, I wrote it with the idea of having people feel like they had some emotional support, even if they weren't the types to go to therapy. It
Mhm.
like takes you through like how to look at things through patience, respect, peace, clarity, and forgiveness. That's sort of like my thing.
Got it. Got
Foundation.
it. Got
So
it.
I'd be happy to do more with you. Definitely stay in touch. As you're
Yeah.
posting, share with me. I'll post the crap out of it. Sometimes my
Perfect.
queue is really long, so I might post it later, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll ask you to join the Facebook group. I think I sent it to you, but I'll send it to you on email. And then we're planning on building that up because see, when they need me, when they go through divorce, they need me now, right?
I know.
And I want to take advantage of this. And unfortunately, most of the attorneys out there are not like you. Most attorneys also do not really understand the financials, so they shouldn't be doing the financials, right? And sometimes even this one kick-ass little woman, I mean, she's like a little spitfire, take charge person, and she's married to an attorney, partner at one of the big firms, Philly-based, and he has a PE. And her attorney, she paid her 25 grand. She was $8.50 an hour plus, I think, $5.50 for the assistant. And they were dragging her to a meeting. She hired me on Friday. She was going to a meeting on Monday. I'm like, I cannot produce financials overnight. You cannot go to this meeting. She goes, well, she's telling me I have to. I said, you hired her. She works for you. She call off the meeting. You're not going to burning up $1,200 an hour when you don't have your financials ready.
Right.
Right? It's
Absolutely.
like,
It's ridiculous. Okay, I got to hang up because I got a 1:30.
okay, goodbye.
Okay, bye.
Have a good one.
You too.